Today on CityCast Boise, we're breaking down why Boise was abuzz after 3 new billboards popped up and how a judge's ruling will affect a Friday protest. Plus, we explain the Supreme Court's decision to suddenly allow Idaho to enforce its ban on transgender healthcare for youth. It's Friday, April 19th. I'm Lindsay Van Allen, and this is what Boise's talking about. Joining me today is Blake Hunter with our Hey Boise newsletter. How are you doing today, Blake?
I'm doing good. It's been a sunny week. It's stayed sunny all week. So yeah, I'm doing great.
So glad to have you here. And actually today, I'm really excited. We're starting with a breaking update about something that we've both been interested in the past. Can you tell us more about what's going on with the Sierra Club in Boise?
Yeah, so we talked about this a few weeks ago, but when the Sierra Club first announced this lawsuit against the city of Boise over noise ordinances regarding protests. So specifically, we talked about the use of megaphones in parks in the downtown area because the Sierra Club alleged, people remember the Sierra Club alleged that the city of Boise has kind of been essentially discriminating in their decisions over how to enforce these noise ordinances, including the use of megaphones and amplified sound, and has arrested or kind of intervened in 4 different progressive protests in the last, 3 years, and saying, you can't use megaphones, in some cases arresting activists who, to their knowledge, they had a lot of experience using megaphones in downtown Boise. So to their knowledge, they were just doing their job. They were doing what they've usually done before, and then police stepped in and enforced this noise ordinance. And so the Sierra Club brought this lawsuit saying, well, why is this suddenly being enforced? How do we know whether it's going to be enforced or not? And particularly part of how they frame this lawsuit is that there's a protest on Friday, so today, from the Boise Youth Climate Justice League, who is, doing a protest and demonstration in downtown Boise, meeting at the state capitol and going to City Hall. And, they intended to use a megaphone. And so this court hearing got expedited, and a judge essentially agreed partially with the Sierra Club and said that the Sierra Club could use a megaphone at this protest this Friday. So it's very narrowly limited that this judge agreed.
Is it just for that event or just for Sierra Club?
For Sierra Club, to my understanding, which, this is still moving. So if I've got that wrong, I apologize, and we'll follow up on it for sure. But yeah, to my knowledge, it's Sierra Club. Yeah, they're really counting this as a win, particularly because in the hearing, one of the points that Sierra Club's attorneys brought up from the Rest Collective, they brought up, we have no way of knowing whether the city is going to enforce this or not. And so where is that discretion happening? Is it content-based or is it speaker-based? Or what is it? Is it volume-based? And all of these questions. The attorneys were kind of right in saying that the city of Boise's attorneys really didn't have a defense. They didn't really have a defense on that particularly, and actually insisted your other option is to go door-to-door knocking and distribute literature and stuff like that. But we all know that protests have their own role.
Yeah.
And so that's where this case currently stands. But the judge just provided that oral ruling on Wednesday of this week so that the protest could go ahead and happen, and we'll provide a more detailed written ruling later on. So yeah, we'll stay tuned to that and see what he says, because essentially what the Sierra Club is asking for is an injunction, which is a word that we're going to be saying a lot today.
Yeah.
An injunction,
word of the day.
Yeah, on these 2 specific ordinances from the city of Boise regarding noise and regarding permitting in public parts. So this gets kind of complicated really quickly, but essentially the Sierra Club right now is excited about this and hoping that these ordinances might be completely overturned because of sudden reinforcement or enforcement of it on what they see as sudden enforcement on it in the past few years.
Well, I was going to say that was very timely for their protest today, and I'll be interested to see how the city responds and what happens moving forward. I'm really interested in this case.
Yeah, me too. I mean, we talked about this last time of we've both been, to protest downtown and seen megaphones used for years, and have noted, a lot of community members have noted the increase in enforcement of these ordinances. It's hard not to see it as targeted as a community member, to be honest. And so, yeah, we'll see how it develops.
Okay, Blake, I also wanted to highlight something else that happened this week. There were some new billboards that were popped up around town. I think people have seen them. There's been some news about them, and it's caused quite a bit of discussion. And so I really wanted us to talk about what happened, the different groups that are involved, and this community discussion that has also sprung up with these billboards. So these billboards say, to be clear, Hamas is your problem too. And they were funded, as far as we've been able to find, from the Idaho Israel Alliance and Jew Belong. And the Idaho Israel Alliance says, our mission is to activate Idahoans to support Israel and oppose anti Semitism through education, community engagement, and advocacy. And these billboards are supposed to be up for, I believe, 3 or 4 more weeks.
Yeah, I think so. And so to be just to be extra clear, like Hamas, referring to the political organization that Israel says is they're trying to target in Palestine and in Israel. And that conflict has led to almost 40,000 deaths of Palestinians so far in the last 6 months. And nowhere in the Idaho-Israel Alliance's comments, mentioned that number or anything like that, which I think is important to point out. And also, their reasoning for this, and I'll just read an excerpt from one of their statements that they posted online, is that these billboards are, quote, in response to the dramatic rise in Jew hate across America since the October 7th terrorist attack on Israel. The Idaho-Israel Alliance and Jew Belong seek to unite the Treasure Valley in protection of American Judeo-Christian values. So there's a lot going on in there. We can, all of us, get behind trying to fight a rise in anti-Semitism.
Oh, absolutely.
Which we know over the past, 6-7 years. It's been an undocumented rise for many years at this point. And so on board with that. And then in the latter part of that sentence, it shifts to American Judeo-Christian values, which, that definitely rings some bells. And so we reached out to the folks at Boise to Palestine, who are also fundraising for a billboard of their own right now. And then earlier this week, on the April 15th, they had a demonstration on the Cloverdale overpass over I-84, calling attention, saying that this is a genocide against Palestinians, which, international courts have agreed with that. Like I said, they're also fundraising for a billboard of their own. We specifically asked them about the Idaho-Israel Alliance's use of the term American Judeo-Christian values. So can you tell me what they said about that?
Yes, absolutely. And I just want to read their bio for anyone who isn't familiar with Boise to Palestine. Their bio is a movement in Boise seeking the liberation of Palestine. And their statement was, Boise to Palestine stands in solidarity with Jews in our community who detest war propaganda. And this is what we believe the billboards are. The term Judeo-Christian is nothing more than a political religious ideology in today's modern world, and boldly put, a racist dog whistle. It has been denounced by Jews worldwide as a movement that does not fit Judaic beliefs. The saying Judeo-Christian notably excludes other religions and has historically had far-right-leaning political values. The term has been co-opted to promote an anti-Islamic agenda and spread fear around a Muslim invasion. Their practices have less to do with anti-Semitism and more to do with anti-Muslim rhetoric.
Right.
So, yeah, that I think they particularly were signaled by that phrasing also of Judeo-Christian and delineating that, anti-Semitism is always wrong. A rise in anti-Semitism shows, we have lots of work to do, but then trying to tie that to Judeo-Christian values is exclusionary to everyone who doesn't necessarily fit in that religious belief system.
Yeah. And it's interesting so far, Boise to Palestine has commented pretty publicly, on social media and whatnot at protests and saying that there's been a lack of action and a lack of even saying things from Boise and Idaho leaders, which, here at CityCast Boise, we've certainly noted that too. Obviously, it's a very touchy subject, but Boise to Palestine is kind of pointing out I think that their last sentence of that statement, their practices have less to do with anti-Semitism and more to do with anti-Muslim rhetoric. That is a strong claim, and it's when it's tying back to American Judeo-Christian values, I do hear what they're saying.
We also reached out to another group. We reached out to If Not Now, Idaho, and they are part of a larger if not now group that is nationwide. I'll just read their bio really quickly, and then Blake, we got a statement from them too, if you'd be willing
Yeah.
to read that. So If Not Now is an American Jewish organization that is organizing our communities to end U.S. support for Israel's apartheid system and demand equality, justice, and a thriving future for all. And then If Not Now Idaho says that they are a group of Idaho Jews fighting for equality, justice, and a thriving future for all Palestinians and Israelis.
Like you said, we reached out to them specifically asking about these billboards. And, there's many other things to talk to them about, but specifically about these billboards, they said, we want to be very clear. Jewish people have 1,000 opinions about Israel and about Palestinian people. The Idaho-Israel Alliance and its affiliated organizations do not speak for all of us. Our issue with this billboard is that linking a blanket statement about Hamas to a vague statement about Jewish people from a group that weaponizes anti-Semitism is calculated to justify Israel's 6-month assault on Gaza that has killed nearly 40,000 Palestinians. It perpetuates a false binary between supporting Palestinians and supporting the Jewish people. As committed Jews who believe in the liberation of Palestine, we stand against the weaponization of anti-Semitism to silence criticism of Israel. And specifically, not to put words in their mouth, but specifically a lot of the organization around it has also been, the U.S. funding of this. Like, we send Israel billions and billions of dollars annually.
That's something that Boise to Palestine, when they did their demonstration on the overpass on Cloverdale Road, highlighted is how many Idaho taxpayer dollars are going to what is happening right now in Gaza and is funding that.
And I have to say, as someone in media, but also just someone as a concerned Boisean, a couple weeks ago we were talking about the state of Idaho cutting federal money for school lunches that we're going to provide $40 a month to like 100,000 students, I believe, or children. And so it is, as a tax-paying citizen, it is hard not to look at that and be frustrated that we are not feeding students here, children here, to the extent that we could, but we are contributing a lot of money overseas to this campaign that has killed, again, almost 40,000 people. And so that is not to say that this is, not a complicated issue, but I think that there just needs to be more conversation, more open conversation in Boise than I have seen in the past few months. And so we appreciate all of these groups for being willing to chat with us. I have a little segment in the newsletter next week coming out asking Boise to Palestine some questions. And we're certainly going to be talking with the Idaho-Israel Alliance as well, as we need to in the future to keep this conversation going.
I just wanted to take a moment in between some kind of heavy topics to mention that Representative Sue Chu has passed away. And she served for 18 years as the Democratic representative of District 17. She was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer late in 2023, and she ended up passing middle of the week, April 17th. And the Idaho Dems put out a statement and talked about how she was a legendary door knocker. She really engaged with her constituents, and that she was one of the earliest and most active volunteers in the efforts to expand Medicaid in Idaho. So I just wanted to take a moment and talk about this important representative in Boise that is no longer with us.
I think of Sue Chu as a person who just had a lot of hope for Idaho. The one biggest thing that I remember about her is her engagement with young Boiseans. And, I've been excited to see, or glad to see that, several people have mentioned that in social media comments and whatnot under posts announcing her passing. But yeah, I remember going to Boise State, and on one of my first trips to the Capitol, she was just so engaging. And there are some legislators there who do not see the young people who walk through those doors. Mm-mm. And she was not one of those people. She did the opposite. Yeah, I just remember her being so engaged and reaching out to this group of students at Boise State at the time. She tried to show us, shine light on the path of how we could be part of governance and part of the public conversation. And she just did it with such care. And it's really dark. I mean, it's sad. It's Boise was better off with her.
Yes.
But she served for 18 years. Like, that is so long.
Yeah.
Especially to serve in the legislature. Like, that is a thankless job. You don't get paid that much. You have to have a solid working job on top of that. And there are some causes that people work for that don't exactly bring in a ton of money. And so, she was just really doing the work, and remembering her, thinking of her this week for sure. And yeah, I hope everyone does.
Yeah, just to echo what you said, all of my experiences with her were so similar. She was so positive. She had a lot of hope for Boise, a lot of hope that young people in Boise and in Idaho were the future and were engaged and really believed in our ability to help this state and to make a difference in this state. And that always really inspired me. And so we are less without her, but we are more because of what she did.
Absolutely. And now we need to discuss something that she fought against, which we got some news from the Supreme Court this week. Can you give us a little rundown of what happened with Idaho's gender-affirming care ban for youth?
Yeah. So, and just to be clear, there's been a lot of confusion, I feel like, surrounding this, which is understandable because Idaho has no shortage of laws and issues it's had with transgender care.
Yeah.
And so there was a recent bill that we have talked about that recently became law that is not allowing anyone on Medicare or state insurance to do transgender procedures or have gender affirming care.
And that includes adults.
And that's adults and children.
Yeah.
This is not about that. That is a whole separate thing. The Supreme Court has not weighed in on that at all. So what this is the Supreme Court has weighed in on a bill that Idaho signed into law last legislative session, and that was House Bill 71. And this was a law that banned gender affirming care for all youth. So anyone under 18, no medications, no hormone blockers, and no surgical procedures, which, according to the hospital systems within the state, those surgeries were not happening anyway. So really, it was a ban on gender affirming care for transgender youth. Now, an Idaho judge put an injunction in place saying that medications would still be available while this is being decided, while this is moving through the court system, so that transgender youth in Idaho could still access puberty blockers and hormones, but the surgical bans would stay in place. And so what the Supreme Court decided is that they will be hearing this. This will continue to move through the court systems, but they reversed that injunction. So what that means is that no gender affirming care is available for someone under 18 in Idaho. It is now banned. And it went into effect immediately this week as soon as the Supreme Court said that. So they haven't heard it and they haven't ruled on it. But while it's moving through the courts, the ban is now completely in place. So this was a very sudden reversal of that injunction. I know from people I've talked to within healthcare, this was very sudden, and they're kind of reeling. And I know families with transgender kids are reeling because they have appointments coming up to get their medications. They needed to fill prescriptions. They can't do that right now. There's a lot of confusion about what they can do moving forward, which is very scary and unsettling, especially after this past legislative session where there were so many laws targeting transgender people and transgender children. So this has really created a lot of stress and tension in this community. And I thought it was really interesting. The Supreme Court said, though, that the two children who are bringing this case against the state, they could still access any transgender care that they needed. The injunction is still in place for them. To me, this feels incredibly disingenuous because if you ban an entire segment of healthcare, it will collapse. It will go away.
Right.
So if
the
it is banned, that's how a ban works. And so where this has been banned, that means clinics and hospitals are not going to be offering it anymore. And so saying that two children in the entire state can access something that has been banned, I feel like that's disingenuous because anyone familiar with healthcare at all knows that just is not available now. So it almost is more cruel to make it seem like a few children have access to this care when it's being banned for everyone else, and that infrastructure is going to immediately go away. So those children won't have access to it either.
Yeah. Yeah, and just to get a little bit more specific about what happened this week, like the reality now is that trans, mostly like teens, but even younger than that, trans minors no longer have access to puberty blockers, which is something that is given to trans kids so that they can essentially make decisions about transition later in life. So it essentially stalls puberty. It's a puberty blocker. That's no longer in place. So now you have trans teens that are just being shoved into puberty that they do not want to experience, and that is very foreign to their body. And that is deadly. And then also you have people being taken off of hormones. And so that is also extremely stressful to the body and to the psyche. And dysphoria is like, will be unreal. And
Yes.
there are so many studies that show that not having that care directly correlates to severe depression and suicidality among trans kids.
Yes.
And so that is just what we're facing right now. And that is suddenly in place. And again, the fine point that I want to put on it, puberty blockers and even the hormones to some extent are still available to cisgender children. So
Yes.
recently there was an Idaho Statesman op-ed written by the parent of a trans girl in Idaho who's, involved in the lawsuits, who said, I have two daughters. One of them is cis, one of them is trans. They are both on puberty blockers. And now my trans daughter has to be taken off of them while her sister gets to continue on them. So, yes, it's important to talk about, physicians and their licenses being
potentially
disbanded,
facing jail time for this.
and felonies. But I think that we have to talk about the whole mess of it as well. It's so much easier to shine light on these people who are, absolutely thankful for them being in our community, of course, but like where the rubber meets the road is with trans kids here.
Yeah, it's with these children.
Yeah, and this is a very dark chapter.
Yeah, well, and as someone who has a nursing license, like it is dangerous psychologically. It's also dangerous medically. Hormones are very powerful, and getting that balance just right takes work and time and medical skill from very skilled physicians. And suddenly not having access to that is incredibly dangerous. And so this is not just psychologically. I don't mean to diminish that at all, because that is a huge factor with this. Dysphoria is a huge factor. But it is very dangerous to not have access to your medication. Anyone taking medication knows if you suddenly don't have access to it, there are a whole host of really problematic things that can happen. These are Idaho families. These are Idahoans. And like you said, just like cisgender people assume they will always have access to their medications because they need it, because they and their doctor decide they needed it, transgender Idahoans deserve that same right.
Well, again, the Supreme Court hasn't actually decided over whether House Bill 71 is constitutional, and that ruling will come out probably June or July. But this decision does not bode well for that ruling.
No, this is a huge red flag about what that decision might look like. Transgender Idahoans, if you know any, it's been a difficult week. Please make sure and reach out and check on your friends.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, Blake, we've hit a lot of really heavy things this week. There was a lot that was, for as light as it is this spring day, is really heavy and is really hard. But there are also positive things happening too. There are also things to look forward to. So what are some of your top picks this week?
Well, I'm excited for this weekend because Saturday is a beautiful Venn diagram for a few different communities, including it's National Record Store Day, which is super fun. And so, the Record Exchange downtown has a bunch of different events kind of like today through Sunday. And but there are also multiple other record stores in the valley, so look them up, see if one's closer to you if you don't want to make the journey downtown or just want to try something new out. I think that's great, and we should support as many record stores as we can get into because those are amazing businesses.
Yeah.
And so I'm excited about that. Hopefully going to be able to get my hands on some records. And also it is 420. So, there's a limit to how much we can talk about that here on the podcast.
Just a friendly reminder.
Just a friendly reminder. Well, one, actually, like, do be safe. If you're going to Ontario, the roads are going to be busy because 420 falls on a Saturday, which is fun. But, it's going to be great weather. So I'm hoping that it's going to be like a very light, breezy, filled with music weekend. And yeah, maybe a little 420. We'll see. We'll see what happens. Don't quote me on that for legal reasons. What about you? What are you up to this weekend?
I am really excited. Like you said, it's going to be great weather and the farmers markets are in full swing.
Yes, they are.
So I'm really excited to get out there and just really see if there's anything new that's popped up, see some of my old favorites, get some of those farm veggies.
Yeah, there's a few rolling in. Yeah, there's some rolling in now.
It's early, but there's a few. And I'm really excited about incorporating some of that into our diet again. I've missed that. And then there is Roby Creek. I will not be participating, but I'm cheering all of you on. Best of luck. You all have worked so hard and I hope it goes so well for you. It seems like it'll be great running conditions and we wish you all the best.
Yeah. It's at high noon at Fort Boise Park. So, and you can go even if you don't know anyone in it and just like cheer people on. That is the fun thing about fun runs is that like anyone can just go and like cheer people on, and it's such a great community event that has been, it's a huge part of Boise history. So if you've never been, maybe go to the farmer's market, go to a coffee shop, get a nice coffee and stroll over to Fort Boise and cheer some people on as they go to absolutely punish themselves. It's a tough race. Good luck to everyone.
Best of luck. Well, thank you so much, Blake.
Yeah, thank you. Have a good weekend, everyone.
That's all for today here on CityCast Boise. The show is produced by Evelyn Avitia, Frankie Barnhill, Dylan Brogan, and me, Lindsay Van Allen. Blake Hunter writes our Hey Boise newsletter, and our music is by Up Is the Down Is The. If you enjoyed our show today, leave us a review. It helps other people find us. We'll be back Monday with important stories from around the city. See you then.